Welcome in, Braves Today, bravestoday.com, all brought to you by Plains Coffee and plainscoffee.com. Use promo code BRAVES to get your 10% off today. He is Lindsay Crosby. I'm Ben Taylor, and we all know what we're going to be talking about, and that is Ronald Acuña Jr., who wants to be a Brave for life, and I'm pretty excited about it, got to be honest.
Yeah, so he reported to spring training today on Friday, and this is almost all of Atlanta's position players are in camp already, by the way, which is great. The deadline's not until Monday to actually show up, and they're almost all there already. But the quote, as translated, was, "It's not a secret that I want to be a Brave for life. It's my hope that we can make that happen soon." And this is interesting, right? Like, we're happy about it, but like the logistics, the money part of this, to me, is really intriguing because he has, if you count the two club options, he has 5 years left on his, left on the deal.
Yeah, I think that's what I found interesting. And that's what I was going to ask you is I wasn't sure. For some reason, I had 3 years stuck in my head for some reason, but then I get to thinking about all those graphics that you will post from time to time that basically shows how many people are left with how many years. And and I'm like, no, he didn't fall in the 3-year window. Like, I'm wondering where.
There's two club options on the end of the deal. So he's making $17 million a year right now. And so the deal when he signed it was 8 years and $100 million. But when you exercise the two options for $17 million apiece, which there's no reason you wouldn't, provided he can still play, it's $124 million over 10 years, and he becomes a free agent in 2029 at age 31. So it's technically only 3 years, but it is very, very unlikely you don't exercise a $17 million option for Ronald Acuña Jr.
Right.
So that's what it is. And I think I don't know what Ronald is thinking. This is all speculation more so than reporting, anything like that. But I did mention in the piece when I wrote about this quote, if you look at some of the other MVPs and what they have gotten paid, and there's some mitigating circumstances here. Shohei Ohtani, obviously, both pitches and hits, and has won 2 of them. But he got 10 years, and adjusting for the deferrals, $46 million a year. Aaron Judge got 9 years and $360 million, so that's $40 million per season. Bryce Harper got 13 years and $330 million. And so $30 to $40 million is more in the range of what an MVP would make on the open market versus Ronald's 17. And so, like, there's reasons to do an extension now, and there's reasons to not do an extension now. If you're the Braves, which do you want first, Ben? Reasons to do it or reasons to not do it?
Well, me looking at it and being in sales myself, I'm leaning more towards reasons not to do it because I'm always looking at trying to make sure I save a dollar here, save a dollar there, or what I have under contract. I mean, I would never take a current client that I have and completely scratch their deal to basically let them pay for something for less money. You see what I'm saying? So
yeah.
I guess let's go reasons to do it first, because I can think of plenty of reasons not to do it.
Yeah. Okay. So reason number one, I think, to do it, and again, I don't know for a fact, this is all speculation, but it's like, is the money, keeping Ronald Acuña Jr. happy and paying him closer to what he could earn on the open market by playing out the contract and going to free agency, right? So, like, reason one is you make him happy. You give him additional money. And I think if you do that, now is the time to do it versus in 3 years. Because if you look at how much team control you have, it's 3 to 5 years of control. You end up really in a situation kind of like where Atlanta's done all of these pre-arbitration extensions, where Spencer Strider had 5 years of team control when you adjusted his deal. And so you paid him, but you paid less than you would have had to pay on the open market for Spencer Strider because you had the leverage of so much team control. And so you weren't working off of what would the open market pay you. You were working off of how much more than you're already making should we give you to bridge some of that gap. And so, like, one of the reasons to make the deal now is it's probably cheaper to make it now than to make it in 2 or 3 years when he's on the verge of getting $300 million or $350 million, and Juan Soto signed for $500 million or something stupid. Like that's a reason to do it now. But there's also a couple things that kind of make you hesitate on this whole thing. And it's like, one, you have so many players that are locked up long term. If you open negotiations and renegotiate a deal, in essence, that's like halfway done, that has the danger of setting a precedent to other players and saying, hey,
correct,
yes, we locked you in for 7 years at $20 million a year, but if you go win an MVP, we're going to have to pay you more money. And so, like, yes, you get the MVP, but it's all about the precedent that it sets of, yes, we locked this deal in, but you can come back and ask for more money and we'll do it, right?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit concerning. And then I think, too, is we've talked about this before in the context of, a lot of things, but nobody on this roster is making more than $22 million a year.
I know.
Yeah, you've had guys that have gotten paid more than that. Josh Donaldson made $23 million for that 1 year that he played. You offered Freddie Freeman more than $22 million. You offered Aaron Nola more than $22 million. But nobody on this roster is making more than $22 million a year. And the argument could be made that Ronald Acuña Jr. is better than all of them. But that's just, that has been the line that we have not yet seen crossed on a multi-year deal signed by Atlanta. And so if you extend Ronald before the end of free agency, or sorry, before the end of his deal, and you go over that $22 million number, one is, what example precedent does that set to other players? How much more do you have to pay the next guy you try to lock up? And then two, what does that do towards the pursuit and the hopes of re-signing Max Fried, who is up after this season? So there's reasons to do it. There's reasons to not do it. Either way, I don't envy Alex Anthopoulos, because this has now become the talking point for the most part of Braves camp. We had been focusing on World Series or bust and Jared Kelenic and the fifth starter's job. And now Twitter, the websites, everything's been just going nuts with Ronald Acuña Jr. wants to be a Brave for life. And a lot of the fans want to see him get paid more money. But Anthopoulos has to balance the now with the future.
You brought something up that really jumped out at me that I honestly, of course, that's why you're a money guy and you think about this kind of stuff. And you think more long-term than I do. I think more short-term, like, hey, let's keep him happy, that kind of thing. I fall into that fan category of let's just get him happy. We'll worry about the rest later. However, you brought up one interesting point about one of the good reasons to do it is to go ahead and do it now because it may save you more money long term. I believe that is true. And the reason being, because now the precedent's been set, Lindsay, the Otanis of the world, the Bryce Harpers of the world,
the judges,
the judges of the world. If you wait 3 years and he has, let's just say, another MVP season in the next 3 years, not does it every year. Let's not paint everything to be roses and rainbows. So let's just go ahead and say, let's say he has one, or at least he's in the MVP running in any of those years.
MVP caliber season.
Yeah, MVP caliber season. Those prices you're seeing now, 3 years from now, are going to be even higher. And I mean, and that's got nothing to do with just saying the word inflation. It's got everything to do with setting a precedent. Now it has been set. Now the numbers are out there. They're public of what everybody's getting. Now, with that said, and I asked you this before we came on, what if the Braves pull a Dodgers and they do a deferral money with him? What if they keep him at the 12 and say, hey, in 20 years, we'll give you the difference of, instead of you making 12 per year, and in 12 to 15 years, when you're sitting on a beach in Venezuela, you're going to be getting a check for $70 million a year for the next 3 or 4 years after that.
Yeah, and deferred money is something Atlanta doesn't have any current contracts that have deferrals put in by Atlanta. And a lot of those weird contractual terms, I call them weird, but those terms you see that are deferrals, that are player opt-outs, things like that, Atlanta doesn't really do those. And I found a quote, I was looking at some of this, looking through old notes, found a quote from Alex Anthopoulos where he said the team doesn't really like to do deferrals because they want the money to be on the field versus going into an account to be used later. Because the way that deferrals work, a lot of people got this wrong around the Ohtani thing, is let's say somebody has a deferred contract for 2024. You have to actually fund that money by I think it's June or July 1st of 2026. Yep. Like you have to actually spend that money.
I didn't know that until you told me that a few pods ago when you brought. I had no idea. I didn't know that.
Yeah, like you don't have to actually give them the money, but you have to put it into a dedicated account for that player relatively soon after that season's played. So deferred money only really helps you with a small discount, right? Like Ohtani's money, he's getting $70 million in those years, but the Dodgers are having to spend $46 million to fund that. And so, like, yes, they're saving money, but it's still a big outlay. And that's an outlier deal because there's no interest. Most of these deals are going to have interest on them. And so let's say a $30 million salary that's deferred, you're still going to be paying probably $22 million or $24 million of that. And you're just going to be doing it, putting in an account and giving it to them later. So I like the idea of finding a way to go above your usual number. I just don't know if deferred money is the way to do it. And from what Alex Anthopoulos has said, it's not going to be something he's going to want to do.
You mentioned Max Fried just a little bit ago, and we'll get to that momentarily. First, plainscoffee.com is where you need to go. Use promo code BRAVES. Get your 10% off. It's going to head straight to your door. They're not even going to roast the beans until you make that order. And then guess what? A couple of days later, it's going to be sitting on your doorstep. They're going to ship just as soon as they possibly can. And that freshly roasted coffee to customers around the world. Experience the goodness of freshly roasted coffee beans delivered to your doorstep in the flavors of pecan pie, turtle, as well as caramel, cinnamon hazelnut, pumpkin spice, even Cinnabon. Go to plainscoffee.com and enter that promo code BRAVES and get your 10% off. Max Fried, we thought that we had discussed contracts and negotiations with him numerous pods ago, and now it's come back up. And the reason being is because pitchers and catchers reported, and somebody was like, well, is there any way something like this is going to happen? Well, I guess a couple of things. Number one, if they go ahead and do something with Ronald Acuña Jr., does that mean Fried's gone? Because that's going to be tough to flip the bill and cover both of those, quote unquote nuts. And so do you hold off on the Acuña deal and see what you can do with Fried? I guess what's the thought process of AA right now as far as this is concerned?
So there are ways to structure the deal with Acuña where you don't have to kick in and start with his significant money until you get some stuff off the books. After this season, Charlie Morton's $20 million is off the books. Marcell Ozuna's $16 million is off the books. Fried is making $15 million. A lot of that, Travis d'Arnaud has an option you can decline if you want to. A lot of the money does come free, and the way you can structure an extension is you can have it kick in after a certain year. So theoretically, you could start Ronald's extension you could say give him a signing bonus now, but then you could start his actual higher salary in like 26 or something. But it does seem increasingly unlikely that you have the money to pay both. And I wrote this a while back, actually. I want to say a couple weeks ago, right around Braves Fest.
Yep.
If you're going to extend Max Fried, this is really the only chance you have to do it. Like this right now is it, and it would just tack on to the end of his deal. So his raise would start in 25. You can stagger both of these, but it just doesn't feel like, given how much money you've already been spending on everybody else, and until all that money falls off in 25, it doesn't feel like you have the space to do both. But I think you kind of touched on what I think is probably going to be the plan. You're going to try to sign Fried. And if for some reason, whether it's in spring training and extension, you can't get it done, or it's when he gets to free agency and you can't seem to make the money work and get it done, I feel like then Atlanta could always pivot knowing they have money coming free and look at, well, let's extend Ronald Acuña Jr. Maybe they extend Ozzy. I don't know. That's not reporting. That's speculation. And then look at what do we have with these prospect pitchers who can come into the rotation? How do we supplement that? But it is the other part of this I do think too is it's a really interesting and potentially heavy free agent class for starting pitching next year. Corbin Burns is going to be a free agent. He's a Scott Boras guy. He probably doesn't sign an extension. You've got Zach Wheeler, who's working on an extension now, but he's also in his 33 or so. And so does Philly want to go long-term on him? Robbie Ray could opt out of his deal. Walker Buehler, who's coming back from Tommy John, should be a free agent. Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander has a player opt out. Like there's a lot of, not all the same age, but there's a lot of like top-end pitching options in the market this year. And so does Fried say, hey, if I can get 80% of that money from the team, does he extend in spring training and just stick around versus going to the market and having to compete with all of those guys? I don't know. But I do think you can't do them both. And you probably, it was not at the same time, and you probably need to figure out Fried before you deal with Ronald for a bunch of the reasons we mentioned earlier. I think you can do Fried first or answer Fried one way or the other.
Yep.
And then you could look at a 25 extension with Ronald that's maybe just tearing up 1 or 2 years of a deal versus tearing up 3 years of a deal like if you did one now.
Is AA in the driver's seat with this as far as the Fried conversation is concerned? And the reason being is, number one, what is in-house. He keeps bragging, and the staff keeps bragging, the coaches and the manager, they all keep bragging about what is sitting in the minors right now that could possibly be the arms of the future. Also, number two, what you just mentioned, free agent market next year, where you could go and grab a guy maybe in the twilight of his career that still has a year or two remaining that would love to come play with this lineup that the Braves will still have intact next season.
Yeah.
The only person there probably is d'Arnaud, like you said, that has that option.
And Marcell Ozuna, who's
and Ozuna.
Option year also. So
that's something that, but I think that those two spots could be filled easily. And if you look at what's around the league. So I guess the two questions I'm asking is in the driver's seat because of the young arms and because of free agency next year with the current lineup he has in place.
Based on the way we've seen AA do some of these negotiations before, I'm thinking about Dansby. I'm thinking more so about Freeman than anything else. It feels like AA knows he has flexibility, right? You can't, none of these prospects, and I think I worded it this way in the piece, none of these prospects can replace Max Fried, but they can give you the innings that you would be losing from Max Fried. And so I think what AA is probably going to do is what we've seen with Freeman, what we saw with Swanson. He's going to say, this is the dollar amount that we are comfortable going. And this is the number of years that we're comfortable with. And we really can't go outside of that. And if you're willing to take a little bit less money to come here, we can make this work. Freddie Freeman ended up taking less money to go somewhere else because he wanted to go home. Dansby took significantly more money. Again, Braves fans, do have zero ill will towards Dansby Swanson. He got so much more money than we were offering.
He got paid.
Freddie, between the deferrals and the California taxes, got a little bit under what we were offering. So that one's different. But for Dansby, he got significantly more money. He left.
If you feel bad for anybody, feel bad for the Cubs as an organization. Let's just call it what it is with his year he had last year.
Feel bad for the Dodgers owners have to stroke these checks. Actually,
yeah, exactly.
Don't feel bad for them. They're billionaires. But no, I feel like Anthopoulos does have leverage here. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, to answer the core of your question, he does have leverage because you have other options to replace those innings, and you think you have multiple options that can eventually get you to the ceiling that Max Fried has as a potential Cy Young caliber pitcher, right? Fried's finished second in I think 22, and then he had another top 5 finish in his career. He's a top of the rotation number 1 pitcher, and you have a few prospects that you think could reach that ceiling. And so because of that, I don't think AA is going to be as desperate to go to whatever length necessary to bring Fried back. And he alluded to that. He said that, what was it? Guys, our goal is always to keep the guys here while also making sure we keep a competitive club around them. That's the trick, trying to balance it out. And the balance is, how much can we offer? Can we get close enough to what he wants where he stays here versus going somewhere else?
And if Fried learns anything, he should learn something from the entire Freeman thing that took place, where Chipper told Freeman, you need to take care of this as quickly as possible. Don't wait until the end of the season to start drawing lines in the sand. You will not win that battle. And so if Fried can look back on some things that have taken, or at least Fried's team can look back on some things that have taken place, AA has proven that he is a savvy businessman, and he is not afraid to walk away from a deal for the betterment of the club instead of the individual. So we shall see how that works out. You mentioned d'Arnaud and his option. That would have given us a chance to kind of talk about Drake Baldwin. We can't get to you today.
Sorry, buddy.
So we'll have to wait until next time around, and hopefully we'll get to see you in spring training. Go to plainscoffee.com. Use promo code BRAVES. Get your 10% off. He's Lindsay Crosby. I'm Ben Taylor. Go to Braves Today and bravestoday.com for all the written stuff that Lindsay has up. Lindsay, as always, thank you, bud.
Thanks, buddy.